The slap landed before anyone could process what happened. Brittany's head turned slightly with the impact. The entire floor stilled. Every keyboard stopped. Every voice cut off. Sarah's hand was still raised. Then Brittany set her coffee cup down on the nearest desk. Slowly. Deliberately. And before Sarah could lower her arm or speak or breathe, she slapped her back. Clean. Precise. Not frantic, controlled. The kind of response that said she hadn't lost herself. She had simply decided. Don't, Brittany said quietly, ever put your hands on me. The room forgot how to function. Sarah's hand flew to her own cheek. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Shock, fury, and humiliation were all fighting for the same space on her face, and none of them was winning cleanly. Seconds before all of this, Sarah had leaned in close, voice low and rehearsed, the kind of delivery that had been practiced in private. Women like you don't last in his world. Brittany had looked at her, really looked at her, and said, then maybe it's not his world that's the problem. That's when Sarah's composure broke entirely. And that's when, at the far end of the corridor, the door to the corner office opened. Jang Tae-yoon didn't rush. He stepped out the way he always did, measured, unhurried, the kind of stillness that made people straighten without being told to. He took in the scene once. Sarah's hand at her cheek. Brittany standing steady, her expression controlled in a way that somehow made the moment more striking, not less. The frozen room. The silence. 3 seconds. He walked forward. Sarah. One word. The room tightened. My office. Now. And if you think this is just another office conflict, leave a like. Because what happened next, no one in that corridor was ready for it. 6 months earlier, Brittany Palmer was sitting in a corner booth of a mid-morning cafe, coffee cooling beside her, patient files spread open across the small table. She wasn't trying to be noticed. That was the thing about Brittany, she never tried. 27 years old, private practice, a client list she'd built deliberately over 3 years of choosing quality over volume. She moved through rooms the way people do when they've learned that presence doesn't require performance. She was reading when it happened. A shoulder. A jostle. Coffee straight across her papers. She looked up. The man standing over her was already reaching for napkins, already signaling the counter, already handling it, not frantically, just efficiently. Like someone accustomed to fixing things before they had the chance to become problems. I'm sorry, he said. It's fine, she said. She meant it. He could tell she meant it, and that seemed to slow him down slightly, like he'd prepared for a different response and now didn't quite know what to do with his hands. He replaced her coffee without asking. She thanked him. He gestured at the seat across from her, not presumptuous, just questioning, and she nodded because she was curious, and Brittany Palmer had learned a long time ago to trust her curiosity over her caution. His name was Jang Tae-yoon. He didn't tell her what he did, not specifically, and she didn't press. He wasn't just wealthy. His world didn't operate entirely within the law, and everyone around him knew it without needing it explained. He asked about the files spread across the table, not nosily, just noticing, and she told him she was a physician. Private practice. She managed her clients' health the way a good financial advisor managed a portfolio, proactively, personally, long-term. She caught problems before they became crises. She stayed close enough to matter. He considered that for a moment. That's a very specific niche. It suits the way I work. Which is, carefully, she said. He smiled at that. Not a performance, a real one, quick and slightly surprised, like she'd said something he hadn't seen coming. She noticed it, filed it away without letting on that she had. They talked for 12 minutes. She knew because she had a 10:30 and she kept a peripheral eye on the clock, but she let the conversation run slightly over, which she almost never did. He was still. That was the thing about him. Most men in his position, and she could tell, even without the specifics, that his position was significant, filled silence with noise and filled space with performance. He didn't. He asked questions and then actually sat in the answers. He said less than he thought. She recognized it because she operated the same way. You don't relax easily, do you? He glanced at her, just briefly. Not in places like this. That sounds exhausting. It's necessary. She studied him for a second longer than polite, like she understood more than she said. When she finally gathered her papers, he stood. You don't look like someone who wastes time. I don't, she said calmly. That's why I'm still sitting here. Thank you, she said. For the coffee. Thank you, he said. For the 12 minutes. She left. He stayed a beat longer than necessary, watching the door settle back into its frame, and then he picked up his phone and attempted to resume his day. It took him a moment to focus. Just a moment. But he noticed it. What Brittany didn't know, what she had no reason to know, was that Jang Taeyeon's life ran almost entirely through one person. Kwon Sarah had been his secretary for 5 years. She was precise, unreadable to most people, and genuinely exceptional at her job. She managed his schedule with a kind of accuracy that left no room for error, filtered his communications, coordinated between his legal teams and his considerably less documented operations, and did all of it with a composure that was almost architectural in its solidity. Taeyeon trusted her the way you trust a well-built structure, completely, and without regularly inspecting the foundation. What he didn't inspect, what he had never thought to inspect, was the pattern. In 5 years, there had been women. Not many, but some. A lawyer he'd had dinner with twice, and then found himself inexplicably unable to reach. A consultant who'd come highly recommended and seemed genuinely interested and then, over the course of 1 month, became distant in a way he couldn't trace. A journalist who'd held his attention at an event and then, the one time he'd asked Sarah to pass along his number, had apparently never received it. Each time, something had quietly intervened. A message that arrived too late. A call that went to voicemail at precisely the wrong moment. An impression that formed cool, unavailable, uninterested before any real interest had the chance to root itself and grow. Taeyeon had noticed each time that things hadn't developed and each time he'd accepted it and moved on. He was a busy man. He kept moving. He never connected the spaces into a pattern because why would he? His schedule was managed. His communications were filtered. That was the entire point of having someone like Sarah. Sarah had never explained herself. She never had to. She just made sure the architecture held and the exits stayed clear. And then Brittany Palmer walked into it. 3 weeks after the cafe, Taeyeon told his coordinator he needed a new personal physician. His previous one had relocated. He wanted someone private practice, discreet, someone who understood that certain information could not leave the room under any circumstances. Sarah sourced 3 candidates and ran through them the way she did everything cleanly, without editorializing, names and credentials and contact information in a single document. She did not know, when she pulled Brittany's name from a referral network, that she was handing Taeyeon the woman from the cafe. She didn't know about the 12 minutes. She didn't know about the coffee spilled across the patient files or the way he'd stayed a beat too long watching the door close behind her. She found out the moment the door to his office opened and she heard his voice change. Not dramatically. Taeyeon never did anything dramatic. But Sarah had 5 years of listening to that voice across rooms, through walls, over phone calls at odd hours, and she heard it. The slight pause before he spoke. The shift in register. The way the greeting came out was less like professional acknowledgement and more like something involuntary. You. And from inside the office, calm and equally surprised. You. Sarah stood in the doorway a second longer than she should have. Long enough to see his face, open in a way she almost never saw it. The careful control he wore like a second skin briefly, involuntarily loosened. She closed the door. And something that had been quietly living inside her for 5 years shifted in a way she wasn't ready to examine. The appointments were weekly. Brittany was thorough, professional, warm but boundaried in exactly the way good physicians learn to be. She asked the right questions and listened fully to the answers. She kept records with a precision that Taeyun, who appreciated precision in everything, found quietly impressive. But the appointments stretched. Not inappropriately, not in ways anyone could specifically point to, just slightly past the clinical into something more comfortable. He asked about her practice, and she answered honestly. She asked about his stress levels, and he answered more honestly than he'd intended to. She told him something without specifics about a difficult client situation, and he laughed, genuinely, fully, and she looked at him with an expression she didn't quite manage to neutralize before he saw it. By the 4th visit, they both knew. By the 6th, he said it. Have dinner with me. She looked at him. You're my client. I know. That's not a soft boundary, Taeyun. That's a real one. I know that too. So you're asking anyway. I'm asking anyway, he said, and the straightforwardness of it, no games, no performance, just honesty placed in front of her and left there, made something in her chest do something she didn't particularly appreciate happening in a client's office. I'll think about it, she said. He nodded. He didn't push. He didn't circle back to it at the door or send a message through the office line the next day. He simply waited. You always schedule me at the end of the day. Fewer interruptions. Or fewer people watching? She said. A brief pause. Both. From the doorway where she'd been standing for exactly 43 seconds longer than necessary, Sarah watched him watch Brittany leave. She'd seen him engaged before. Interested before. But this was different, and she knew it was different the same way you know when weather is changing, not because anything dramatic has happened yet, but because the air itself is telling you. She walked back to her desk. She began to think. He called Brittany on a Friday afternoon, not through the office line, just directly. I want to take you somewhere Saturday, he said. Not a production. Just dinner. Somewhere quiet. She was quiet for a moment. Then, all right. All right? I said I'd think about it. I thought about it. She could hear the smile in the pause before he spoke again. I'll send a car at 7. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't need to announce itself, no sign outside, 10 tables inside, food that tasted like someone had cared deeply about every single component of it. He was there before her, which she noticed, and he stood when she arrived, which she also noticed and said nothing about. They talked for 3 hours. Not about medicine. Not about business. About the things people talk about when they're paying attention to each other, where they came from, and what shaped them, and what they found worth protecting, and what they'd let go of that they sometimes still thought about. He told her something about his childhood in Seoul that she understood wasn't a thing he said often. She told him something about why she'd chosen this specific kind of practice over a hospital posting, and it was more honest than the version she usually gave people, and she wasn't entirely sure why she'd offered it until she saw the way he received it, carefully, without making it into more than it was. When they stepped outside afterward, the night air was cool, and they stood on the pavement for a moment without rushing to fill it. That was good, she said. It was, he agreed. I'm still your doctor. I know. So we'll figure out what that means. He looked at her. We'll figure it out. She smiled. Just slightly. And he watched her get into the car and stood there until it turned the corner, and the evening felt like a beginning of something, clean and unhurried and real. He didn't know that Sarah had seen the car leave. He didn't know she'd already started thinking about what came next. It started so small that Brittany almost dismissed it. She called the office the following Wednesday to confirm a scheduling detail. The message, she was told when she followed up 3 days later, hadn't been passed along. A small thing. Communications got missed. She moved on. Then she sent a note through the office line about adjusted availability for the following month. He didn't respond. She waited a reasonable amount of time and then sent it again. Still nothing. She assumed he was traveling, his schedule was dense, and she didn't always have visibility into it. What she didn't know was that on his end, he'd heard nothing. No adjusted availability. No follow-up. When he'd mentioned to Sarah that he hadn't heard from Dr. Palmer in a while, Sarah had said, she may have called. Nothing urgent. He'd accepted that. Why wouldn't he? Then Sarah found Brittany in the lobby after a Thursday appointment, falling into step beside her with the practiced ease of someone who had done this kind of thing before and knew exactly how to make it feel incidental. I just want to make sure you're comfortable with the arrangement, Sarah said pleasantly. He's very particular about professional boundaries. Some people misread the warmth. Brittany glanced at her. I haven't misread anything. Of course. I only mention it because he said before that he prefers strict separation between medical staff and personal matters. A small pause. I'd hate for a misunderstanding to affect your contract. Brittany said nothing. You're clearly excellent at what you do, Sarah added, and the compliment was real enough to make the rest of it land correctly. It would be a shame to complicate a good professional relationship. She turned off toward the elevator bank before Brittany could respond. She always left before you found your footing. That was the thing about Sarah. She understood that timing was everything. Brittany stood in the lobby for a moment after she'd gone. She turned it over, examined it, held it up to the light. She thought about Saturday night, the 3 hours, the honesty, the way he'd stood when she arrived. She thought about the unanswered messages. She thought about Sarah's expression in the lobby, smooth, professional, entirely unreadable. She made a decision she would later understand was the wrong one. She believed it. Not entirely, not without reservation, but enough. Enough to walk into the next appointment with her warmth dialed back and her professionalism dialed all the way forward. Taeyun noticed within the first 5 minutes. He watched her through the appointment, answering her questions, following her instructions. He said nothing about it directly, but she could feel him noticing, the way you can feel someone watching you even when you're not looking at them. At the end of the appointment, she gathered her things and said, I'll see you next Thursday, and he said, of course, and there was something careful and slightly too neutral in the way he said it. That evening he told Sarah to find out if something had happened with Dr. Palmer. Sarah said she'd look into it. She didn't look into it. He called Brittany directly the following Tuesday. Her personal line. I want to ask you something, he said. Go ahead. Have I done something wrong? The question landed quietly and precisely, the way a well-placed thing lands. She was quiet for a moment. No. Then why does it feel like you're somewhere else when you're in the room? She didn't know how to answer that without explaining what Sarah had said, and something about the whole thing still felt uncertain enough that she didn't want to say something she couldn't take back. She didn't have proof. She had a lobby conversation and a few missed messages and a feeling she wasn't sure she trusted yet. I'm just being professional, she said. You were professional before. This is different. Taeyun. I took you to dinner, he said. Not accusatory. Just factual. I've been waiting. The honesty of it hit her somewhere quiet. I know, she said. I need to think through something. All right, he said. I'll wait. He always said that. He always meant it. She sat with the phone after the call ended and felt the specific frustration of not knowing who to believe when two things couldn't both be true. She didn't know he was about to find out one of them was a lie. He walked out of his office that Thursday to find Sarah at her desk and asked her directly, the way he asked everything without preamble. "Has Dr. Palmer called this week?" Sarah looked up. Nothing urgent came through. "Has she called?" A fraction of a pause. "She may have called about a scheduling matter." "I handled it." "You handled it?" He looked at her. "She called and you handled it without telling me." "It wasn't." "Sarah." His voice stayed level. That was the thing about him that people who didn't know him sometimes mistook for calm. It wasn't calm exactly. It was control, and they were different things. "When Dr. Palmer calls, you tell me. Every time. Do you understand me?" "Of course," she said. "I apologize." He went back into his office. Sarah sat at her desk and understood that she was losing ground. She went to Brittany directly the following week. No lobby pleasantries this time. No carefully timed exits. She stopped Brittany in the corridor 11 minutes before her appointment, and when Brittany turned and saw her face, she knew immediately that this conversation was going to be different. "I'll be direct," Sarah said. "You've been direct since the beginning," Brittany said. "You're just announcing it this time." Something moved across Sarah's face, not quite embarrassment, but something adjacent to it. It passed quickly. "He doesn't choose women like you. Not permanently." Brittany went still. "Excuse me. He's interested." "I'm not disputing that. But interest isn't permanence. And men in his position, men like him, they don't build futures with women they can't place in their world." "Can't place," Brittany repeated. "You know what I mean." "I want to hear you say exactly what you mean." Sarah's chin lifted slightly. "You're a novelty to him. Something different from what he's used to. That's not nothing, but it's not enough. Not for someone like him." Brittany looked at her for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was measured and quiet. "You've done this before, haven't you? With other women. Not just me." The slight change in Sarah's expression was answer enough. "I protect him," Sarah said. "From what?" "Women who are actually good for him. From distractions." "Is that what I am?" "That's what you all are." The words came out with more heat than Sarah had intended, and she heard it herself, and the hearing of it seemed to rattle her more than anything Brittany had said. She reset. "You're a smart woman. You're exceptional at your job. Go be exceptional somewhere that doesn't complicate itself." "Let me ask you something," Brittany said. 5 years you've been in that office. 5 years you've managed his world and filtered his life and kept everyone at a certain distance." She paused. "Does he know that you do it because you want something you've never once asked him for?" The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the corridor. Sarah's jaw tightened. Her eyes went somewhere complicated. And then, because she didn't have an answer and because Brittany had said the one true thing she had no architecture to contain, she grabbed Brittany's arm. "You should go back to wherever you came from," she said, her voice fraying at the edges now, "and find clients who are actually avail." "Let go of my arm." Brittany's voice was very quiet. Sarah tightened her grip. "You don't understand what you're walking into." "I said let go." Sarah's composure finally, fully broke. The slap came fast and landed hard. The floor went silent. Brittany set her coffee cup down on the nearest desk. She looked at Sarah for exactly 1 second. And she slapped her back. "Don't ever," she said, "put your hands on me." Sarah stood with her hand at her cheek, eyes wide and glassy, the architecture of 5 years of control dismantled in a single corridor on an ordinary Tuesday. And at the far end of it, the door opened. Taeyeon's office door closed behind Sarah, and the silence inside it was a different kind from the silence in the corridor. Heavier. More private. Sarah stood in front of his desk. For the first time in 5 years, she didn't know what to do with her hands. She clasped them. Unclasped them. She looked at him, and he was already looking back at her with an expression she had never seen on his face, not fury, not coldness, just a kind of settled finality. Like the decision was already made and what happened in this room was simply the formal acknowledgement of it. 5 years, she said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. I know, he said. I know this office better than anyone alive. I know your schedule, your contacts, the things you don't put in writing and the things you do. I have kept this whole operation running without a single. Sarah. She stopped. I know what you've done for this office, he said. That was never in question. Then. But I also know about the lawyer, he said. And the consultant. And the journalist who never received my number. He watched her. And I know about the calls from Dr. Palmer that you buried. The color left her face. I didn't want to see the pattern, he said. That's different from not seeing it. I want you to understand that I knew somewhere and I chose not to look. That's on me. A pause. But what I won't do is pretend it didn't happen. And what I absolutely won't accept is what happened in that corridor today. I was protecting you, she said, and her voice broke on the last word. Just slightly, just enough. From what, Sarah? His voice was quiet, not unkind. From a woman who is good and intelligent and sees me clearly? From something real? He let a moment pass. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting something that was never yours to protect. The thing behind her eyes finally, fully cracked. She blinked fast. She would not cry in this office. She had never cried in this office. Clear your desk. You're done here, he said. You have 30 minutes. I'll have HR process everything correctly, references, severance, all of it handled properly. She stood there one moment longer. Then she turned for the door. Sarah. She stopped. Didn't turn around. You were extraordinary at your job, he said. That part was always real. She walked out and closed the door behind her, and she didn't let herself feel anything until she was in the stairwell where no one could see her, and then she felt all of it at once, 5 years of it, and it was worse than she'd imagined it would be. He found Brittany at the window at the end of the corridor where he'd asked her to wait. She heard him coming and turned. He stopped a few feet from her and looked at her face, the faint mark nearly gone now, but not entirely. She blocked your calls, he said. 3 that I know of, Brittany said. Probably more. She told you I wanted strict professional distance. She implied it. Very convincingly. He exhaled once. I never said that. I figured that out eventually. I'm sorry, he said. That you were in the middle of something I should have caught long before it reached you. She looked at him for a moment. She's been in love with you for years. You know that. I know. You always knew. He was quiet for a moment. I suspected. I didn't examine it because examining it meant disrupting something that functioned perfectly, and he stopped. That was a choice I made because it was convenient. It cost you something. I'm aware of that. Brittany appreciated that. The directness of it. The accountability without theater. You told me, he said, that you'd think about dinner. I did think about it. And then everything got complicated. It did. It's not complicated now, he said. Nothing is in the way now. She looked at him steadily. He looked back. Neither of them was performing anything. Dinner, she said. Tonight. Tonight is very fast. We've already lost time, he said simply. She considered him, the stillness of him, the patience of him, the way he'd waited through everything without turning it into pressure. The way he stood in the middle of a day that had just been genuinely chaotic and looked at her like she was the only clear thing in it. All right, she said. Tonight. Something shifted in his expression. Not dramatically, just a loosening of something around his eyes, a warmth that didn't get performed and was therefore more real than anything performed ever could be. I'll send a car at 7, he said. You always send a car at 7. It worked the first time. She smiled. A real one, the kind that arrived before she could decide whether to let it. He saw it, and held it the way someone holds something they've been waiting for without admitting they were waiting. She picked up her bag. He walked with her to the elevator. The floor was still unnaturally quiet. People were present facing their screens with the dedication of people pretending they hadn't seen everything. At the elevator, she turned around. He was close. Closer than the professional appointments had permitted, and neither of them moved to correct the distance. "I'll see you at 7, she said. 7, he confirmed. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in and turned, and he was still watching her with that particular quality of attention she'd noticed the very first time, not consuming, not possessive, just completely there. Like she had his full presence, and he wasn't rationing it. The doors closed. He stood in the corridor for a moment. Then he walked back to his office, sat at his desk, and for the first time in months, felt something settle correctly back into place. For months suddenly felt longer than it should have. When she walked out of that office, you felt it, didn't you? Because Jang Taeyun did. And Sarah? 5 years of control, dismantled in seconds. Comment below, was she wrong? Did she take it too far, or was she just doing her job? Like and subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for watching. We'll be seeing you in the next one.